Imagine stepping into your brand new home, excited to finally start fresh, only to discover that your own neighbor has been secretly stealing from you for years. That's exactly what happened to me. And when I decided to take revenge, let's just say he lost more than just free water. He lost his home, his income, and even his dignity. If you've ever been wronged by someone who thought they could get away with it, you're going to love this story. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around, because this might just be the most satisfying dose of karma you'll hear today. I had just bought a house in the middle of my capital city. On paper, it was a dream deal. The place belonged to old family friends who hadn't lived in the country for years, and they needed cash quickly, so I got it for a bargain. But the moment I stepped through the rusty old padlock on the front door, I realized this was not going to be as smooth as I thought. The house was half renovated and neglected, and worst of all, it had no front gate. That meant anyone could just wander into my property as if it were a public park. And guess what? On my very first day there, I found a stranger's bike casually parked inside my garage. My garage! I dragged it out to the street, had a gate installed the same day, and thought that was the end of it. But later that evening, I heard angry pounding at my gate. I peeked through the window. Some man stood outside, scowling, waiting, fuming. 15 minutes later, he gave up, took his bike, and left. Already, my excitement was replaced with unease. This wasn't just about moving into a fixer-upper. This neighborhood had problems. The antagonist emerges. And then, there was my next-door neighbor. Let's call him Mr. Entitlement. He was an older man, living on the bottom floor of a 3-story house he owned. The other 2 floors? He rented them out to tenants. That was his only income. Now, Mr. Entitlement already hated that my family friends sold me the house. Apparently, he wanted things to stay exactly as they were, a conveniently abandoned property right next door that he could exploit however he liked. I was warned about him, but honestly, I wasn't intimidated. I'm 6 feet tall, I've got 3 dogs, and I don't scare easy. But then came the first real red flag. One day, I was in the shower when I noticed the water pressure dropping. Not just a little. Enough to make me stop mid-shampoo and frown. And then I heard something. The low hum of a pump from next door. Now, in my country, houses need water pumps to send water up to rooftop tanks, since city water pressure isn't strong enough on its own. So hearing his pump wasn't unusual. But the timing? That was suspicious. I waited. When his pump shut off, I turned on my taps again, and the pressure was suddenly perfect. Too perfect. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just coincidence. He was siphoning water from my lines. My bills, even when the house sat empty, had been mysteriously high for years. Everyone thought it was because of leaks. But now it all made sense. Somewhere during the 3 years this house sat abandoned, this man had illegally connected my water supply to his. He was literally stealing from me. Now look, I could afford it. Water here is cheap. $5 a month, even with 3 dogs, a car, and a garden. It wasn't about the money, but it was the principle. The sheer audacity. This entitled old man thought he was clever enough to mooch off me, like I wouldn't notice. He was stealing something essential, something I was paying for, and acting like it was his right. And that boiled my blood, because it wasn't just about water. It was about respect, and I was done being disrespected. The plan. At first, I considered confronting him, maybe even going to the police. But then it hit me. Why not let karma do the work for me? So here's what I did. I waited until his pump kicked on again, and then I walked over to my main valve and shut off my water supply. That's it. Simple, silent, legal. Now, here's the thing about these water pumps. They're designed to shut off automatically when the rooftop tank fills. But when there's no water flowing in, the pump just keeps running. For hours. Non-stop. And if you know anything about machinery, you know that's a death sentence. What I expected was a burned-out pump. What I didn't expect was something so much better. That night, around 3 a.m., I was woken up by shouting. Angry, frantic shouting. Tenants yelling at their landlord. Turns out, the pump had been running so long that it fried not just a motor, but the electrical wiring of the entire house. Old, Outdated 90s wiring that couldn't handle the load. Suddenly, his tenants had no water and no power, and they were furious. In my country, cutting off essential services like that is illegal, unless it's due to weather or an unavoidable issue. Tenants here have strong protection laws, and they weren't about to let this slide. By morning, one tenant had already packed up and left. Both lodged police complaints. The landlord, that greedy old man, was fined $500 on the spot, a massive amount in my country. He also had to return their security deposits and couldn't legally rent the units again until he fixed the wiring and plumbing. That meant thousands more in repairs. And since the tenants were his only source of income, he was finished. A few days later, he finally showed up at my gate. His face was stiff, unreadable, but his eyes betrayed him. He knew. "Did you turn off your water supply the other night?" he asked, forcing calm. I didn't even flinch. I just shrugged and said, "Oh yeah, my tank had a leak. Had to shut it off till the plumber came." "Why?" The silence between us was delicious. He didn't argue, didn't accuse, just swallowed whatever rage he was holding back and muttered, "Oh, okay." Then he turned and walked away. And that was the last real conversation we ever had. Aftermath. 2 birds, 1 stone. By the end of the week, both of his tenants were gone. He was slapped with fines, debt, and repair bills he couldn't pay. And soon enough, he packed his bags and moved in with his daughter. Meanwhile, I brought in a plumber to cut off every stray pipe leaving my property. No more leaks. No more theft. No more headaches. One flick of a valve. That's all it took. And in the process, I didn't just protect myself. I ended the reign of a selfish, entitled neighbor who thought the world owed him something. 2 birds, 1 stone. The moment I shut that valve, I knew I was taking a risk. But hearing his tenants screaming at him at 3 a.m., watching him lose his income, his pride, and his home, just because he couldn't keep his greedy hands off my water, that was worth every second. And the best part? I never had to break a single law. Justice did the work for me. Sometimes karma doesn't come fast enough, but sometimes you can give it a little nudge. And when someone thinks they can take advantage of you without consequences, the most satisfying revenge is showing them just how wrong they were. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and drop a comment. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen or done? And of course, subscribe for more stories just like this. Because trust me, you don't want to miss the next one.